Hello everyone and welcome back to Set 6, and today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the next Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, Final Fantasy II. And Final Fantasy II is a tough one. Like, there are some things that I absolutely love about Final Fantasy II, and there are some things that I absolutely hate about Final Fantasy II. So yeah, it's a bit of a rough one this. So I'm going to jump into it, I'm going to give you my thoughts on the game, and I'm going to let you know whether or not I think it's worth you picking the game up and playing it if you've never played it before. Don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and get involved in the comments. Let me know what you think of Final Fantasy II if you have played it before. But let's crack on. So with Final Fantasy II, one of the first things that's a big difference is you have actual characters with their own stories, their own motivations, and their own little side narratives. And it is a big step up on Final Fantasy I as far as the delivery of the narrative goes. The story follows the characters Firion, Maria, and Guy for the most part. There is another character called Leon, who's kind of in and out of the party, but he is with you at the start of the game. And then there are some additional characters. You have characters like Gordon, you have characters like Minwu, you have characters like Rickard, you have characters like Edge. So you do get a fair few characters that kind of cycle in and rotate through the party. And that's a good thing. It's definitely an improvement on Final Fantasy I as far as the characters go. And as far as the story goes as well. Like, the story is a little bit more involved, it's got a little bit more depth to it. There's an empire, there's a rebellion going on. All of your characters have kind of been left as orphans after an attack by the empire and things like that. So there's a lot more going on than there is in the original Final Fantasy. And it definitely is better as far as the story and the characters go. Now the next thing, and this is a contentious one, and this is something that this game shares in common with Final Fantasy VIII, in a way. So Final Fantasy VIII's got some systems that people don't like, the junction system, the draw system, all of that people just aren't the biggest fan of. In Final Fantasy II we have something similar. It's not like you have to draw magic or anything like that, but it's similar in the way that people aren't the biggest fan of it, and this is the leveling system. And the way that you level everything in Final Fantasy II is through usage. So it's not a case of I gain XP, and then when I level up, everything levels up, all of my skills level up at the same time. In Final Fantasy II, you don't get XP as a character, you get XP on your skills individually. So if I use fire in a fight, I will gain experience on my fire skill, and the more I do that, the fire skill will level up. And the same goes for everything. Use it a bit more, it'll go up a few more levels. I think the top level is 16 for any magic ability in the game. I didn't get anything anywhere near to level 16. The closest I got was with Cure, which I got to level 11. Other than that, it was like level 9, level 8, stuff like that. Like, it just does not level up that quickly. Once you get towards like the upper end of the levels, the amount that you actually get, yeah, it takes a long time. It does take a while. So I can see why people don't like it. But I do like this mechanic of the more you use a certain skill, the more the person becomes proficient in that skill. It's a more realistic system for an RPG game. Is it the most fun? Not necessarily, and I understand why some people don't like it. It makes things very grindy, and this is something that we'll come back to in the video. Visual upgrades, just very similar to the Pixel Remaster, the first one. There's no real difference there. The characters are slightly nicer, I think, but I think that comes from the fact that the characters have got their own personality and their own actual character, rather than just being part of the group. You know, it's one of the benefits from not having blank slate characters. You can personalize them a bit more. Maria, Faris, Guy, they all look brilliant. So yeah, that's probably the only improvement. Now the difficulty in this game is slightly higher. This is due to things being more expensive. They've rebalanced ethers and a few other items, but mainly the difficulty comes from one thing, and I'm going to be honest, it's the worst thing about this game, and that is the encounter rate. Now, the encounter rate in this game is insane. It is literally the highest encounter rate I think I've ever come across in a Final Fantasy game. It's ludicrous. It's 5 or 6 steps. Every 5 or 6 steps, pretty much, you are getting into a fight. And for a while I was thinking, why is the encounter rate as high as it is? Like, why is it like this? And I think it is twofold. I think it is a twofold thing. So the first thing I think is because Final Fantasy I was quite easy and they wanted to step up the difficulty a bit. They just went a little bit too far with it, potentially. And this isn't me saying that any individual fight in the game is insanely difficult, because it isn't. There is no one individual fight in the game that's like, oh my god, I couldn't get through this fight. Like, I'm streaming Final Fantasy V at the minute. I just got absolutely stomped by Shinryu, the mega boss in that game. Absolutely stomped. Time. Right, I don't know what Spellblade's going to do best, so we're going to try Holy first. Oh no, everyone's dead. Like, I could survive 2 or 3 turns and then it was done. There's nothing even close to that level of difficulty in this game. The issue is purely the encounter rate. That makes it difficult. You go through resources, you go through MP. The ether being rebalanced has made it so that you've not got that, you know, that ability to recover your MP as readily as you could in the first Final Fantasy. And I think there's a mechanical reason for the encounter rate being as high as it is, and it ties into the leveling system. So when you've got a leveling system where you level up skills by gaining experience, by using them, you need to present the player with as many opportunities to use their skills as possible. And therefore you crank up the encounter rate. Now, it would be nice if there was an item in the game. There might be. I might have missed it. I didn't use a guide when I was going through this. I kind of went through it off memory, and I kind of had a list of locations to go to. So if I ever did get actually stuck, I just looked at the list and it was like, right, that's the next location. Didn't know what I was doing there, but I went there. So there may be an item that achieves this. I don't think there is. But it would be nice if there was an item that you could equip that would, you know, drop the encounter rate massively. Like, that would help. Beyond that, though, like, it really is a killer of the game. Like, you can tolerate it and you don't really notice it in the early stages. It's not that bad. But once you get to about the halfway point of the game, you start to notice the encounter rate really badly. Especially when you start hitting some of the longer dungeons towards the end of the game. It just becomes... It stops being fun. I'll be honest, it stops being fun at that point. It becomes something that you just kind of have to get through. And that's how I felt when I was playing through those final sections of the game. I just got to get through this. And I didn't need to level anything anymore. I was already strong enough to finish the game because of all of the other fights that we've done in the game. So yeah, like I say, an item that drops the encounter rate would be so beneficial. So beneficial. Now, we're not going to finish on the bad things. We're going to get back to a couple of good things. Now, one of the good things is the level of customizability that you've got on your characters. So just depending on what weapon you equip on them and what skills you teach them, they can become whatever you want them to be as long as you put the effort in to level them up. Which, I'll be honest, doesn't take that much because you are constantly getting bombarded with fights over and over and over again. But there is that flexibility there. Like, when I was playing through my game, Guy, one of the characters, he's quite a simple-minded fellow. He speaks to animals. He talks like this. You know, he's not the most intelligent, so I refused point blank to give him any magic. I don't think he'd be able to comprehend magic based on the way that he is. And you can do things like that. That level of customizability is there. It's not much, but it's something. But then you get to the best thing about this game, and it's the one thing for me that saves this game and makes it slightly recommendable, and that is the music. For example, all the way through this video, if I've done what I think I'm going to do, you're probably hearing the world map music, the main world map music for Final Fantasy II. And it is possibly one of my favourite pieces of music in the entire franchise. Like, it's not the only piece of music in the game that's good, but it stands head and shoulders above every other piece of music. And it really is a shame that this is a game that I probably won't be coming back to and replaying, just purely because of how it is with the not even the difficulty, just the encounter rate, just the absolute bombardment of enemies. Like, it never ends. It never ends. So, would I recommend playing Final Fantasy II Pixel Remaster? That's a tough one. If you're really into Final Fantasy games, and you've played games before that have got abusively high encounter rates, you'll probably be fine with it. If you can tolerate really high encounter rates and you're already into Final Fantasy, play Final Fantasy II, because it is a good game. If you can tolerate that, you will enjoy it. Otherwise, though, if high encounter rates turn you off, if leveling up skills individually by using them turns you off, if any of those things kind of like make you think, don't know if I'd enjoy that, I'd probably stay clear. I'll be completely honest with you, and I don't think I'm going to say that about any of the other Pixel remasters, but with Final Fantasy II, if you're not prepared for those really high encounter rates, you're probably going to just stop playing halfway through, 3/4 of the way through. You'll get through the first half probably because it's not that bad, it's not that noticeable. You're getting a lot of stat upgrades at the same time, so you are fighting a lot of fights, but you're getting a lot of stuff out of it, so you're kind of like, all right, this is brilliant. But when the levels start to slow down because, you know, to go from level 9 to 10 takes more experience than it takes to go from level 2 to 3, that's when it's going to hit you, because you stop getting that gratification of gaining levels and gaining skills and things like that and seeing your magic get stronger, and all there is that encounter rate. Well, so like I say, if you're into the franchise and you've played games with really high encounter rates before and you were okay with that, play Final Fantasy II. You will have a good time with it. Play it. But other than that, I can't recommend it. I genuinely can't. And it hurts me because there's a lot of good stuff going on in this game. But that encounter rate kills it, especially in the final third. The final third of this game becomes a slog. But that's everything I've got to say about this. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Whether you watched me on stream, whether you've watched other people on stream, or whether you've played it. Let me know what you think about Final Fantasy II. But that's going to be it for me. The next one we're going to get to is Final Fantasy III. But in between that, probably going to drop a Vincent video, the character background and predictions series that I've done. So keep an eye out for that. But thank you for watching. And more importantly than anything, have a great day.